All right. Looks like we have a few people here.
I'm going to spotlight Amy for everyone. Or actually, I'll wait until after I do, and then I'll spotlight you. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. We're going to get started shortly. Alrighty. So let me make sure we have everything ready to go. Okay. Alrighty, so we are going to start the webinar. So hi everyone, welcome to the CTSI Community Engagement webinar series. Our webinar today is titled Just in Time Learning, How to Write a Great Grant, with our speaker, Amy Markowitz. Amy Markowitz is a grant writing expert with 30 years of experience. She's also an editor, scientific writing mentor, and instructor, and curriculum development consultant with a particular expertise in medicine and health policy. So we are very grateful to have Amy come and speak with us today. And so our agenda today is first housekeeping and brief announcements, followed by our presentation from our guest speaker, and ending with a Q&A and any closing thoughts. And so during this presentation, you'll be able to anonymously submit questions for the panelists that will be read at the Q&A section. I will also be monitoring the chat for any questions that populate there as well. And so I also want to start with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we are on the unceded ancestral homelands of the Muwekma Ohlone, Ramaytush, and Yukuts First Nations, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula, East Bay, and Fresno. As the indigenous stewards of these lands, and in accordance with their traditions, the Muwekma Ohlone, Ramaytush, and Yukuts have never ceded, lost, nor forgotten their responsibilities as the caretakers of these places, as well as for all peoples who reside in their traditional territories. As guests, we recognize that we benefit from living and working on their traditional homelands. We wish to pay our respects by acknowledging the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the Muwekma, Ramaytush, and Yokut communities, and by affirming their sovereign rights as First Peoples. And so below, I have attached a QR code for folks to scan, which shows the map of native lands globally. We acknowledge the exploitation of our Black ancestors who toiled on this land, building America's wealth and freedom, and survived despite never being compensated nor fully realizing their own sovereignty. While our ancestors have survived, we honor and remember whose legacies were cut short due to genocidal anti-Black violence. We are working to repair the harms caused by individuals, institutions, and the US government, and we honor the gifts, resilience, and sacrifices of our Black ancestors by protecting our spirit, seeking light and laughter, leaning into love, and investing in our collective legacy. This was adapted from the Preterm Birth Initiative's best practices. So this is our CTSI community engagement team, plus some of our partners as well. And so just wanted to acknowledge them in this space. Just for folks who are maybe like, what is CTSI? So CTSI is the Clinical and Translational Science Institute, and we facilitate clinical and translational research to improve patient and community health. We also provide tools and resources to create better conditions for diverse peoples to participate in research. And so how can we help? We assist you if you have any needs in training and career development, research services, policy and community work, and also any infrastructure or resource needs. Our CTSI Community Engagement webinar series is where you're at now. And the intent behind it is to support authentic and mutual beneficial academic community partnerships. And this year's webinar series really focuses on uplifting and supporting community members and community-based organizations, such as the presentation that we're going to be hearing shortly. And lastly, if you are interested in booking a consultation with us, it's free. You can either send us an email or scan the QR code at the top. We would love to connect with you and share any resources that we may have to support any of your needs. And the first hour is free, so I just want to reiterate that. And so with that, I'm going to pass it to our lovely guest speaker, and I'm so excited for you guys to hear what she has to share with us today. Thank you so much. And let me stop sharing. I can figure out how to do that. Okay, there we go. All righty.
Hi, everyone. I'm really, really pleased to have been invited to give you this talk today. And although, as Tyra said, she will be monitoring the chat for questions, and we had sort of thought to leave the last 10 minutes for Q&A. I'm very flexible about this. So if there is something pressing that comes to mind while I'm talking, please tell Tyra that it is, that she should just shoot in. And there's nothing that I'm saying that can't be interrupted or taken slightly out of order or otherwise. So I also, mostly what I do is teach our faculty and our trainees, meaning med students, pharmacy, nursing, and dental students about grant writing, about manuscript writing, about all things kind of scientific communication, as well as I'm on the clinical side. I help to run a clinical traumatic brain injury program out of San Francisco General. So I find myself throughout our communities across UCSF and within the San Francisco Department of Public Health. And when I talk to our trainees and our faculty, certainly in the last 6 months, I've started every single one of our talks with something that I need not say to you, but I just want to acknowledge, which is there is nothing normal about this moment. And in that context is how I have, in large part, reframed a lot of this talk, which would normally just be about normal funding streams and the regular places that we all would go in the community and in academic science and health policy to find funders who believe in our work, understand our mission, and are anxious to fund us. It's just a matter of writing the best grant or application that we can. And in this moment, as we all know, and you all know better than anyone, this is not the case. So that said, I'm going to share my slides. The other thing that I want to make sure that you know is that there is no reason for you to feel that you have to take notes as we go along. You're going to get these slides. Tyra has very generously agreed, and Rana also, to share these with you. So don't feel that you have to frantically take notes about anything I'm saying. And in addition to the sort of nuts and bolts of how you write a good and compelling and persuasive advocacy grant for your program, there's a whole bunch of resources at the end of different foundations, California, local, community, and nationwide organizations and clearinghouses that you probably know a lot of, but there may be some new ones in there that will be helpful. So without further ado, if there aren't any other questions about what our agenda is for today, and Tyra, I'll rely on you to, to pop in there quickly. We'll just get going. So really the first thing is to not be anxious about writing a grant or what a grant is. It really is your promise, your invocation of what you know about a great idea that fills a need that you uniquely know how to describe for a funder who shares the same goal that you have to fill that need, bridge that gap, deliver that service that you know is either not being done as efficiently or effectively as you think it could be, or is not being done at all. So you kind of relieve some of the anxiety of grant writing by thinking to yourself, if I choose the right funder or right set of funders, they share this goal or this aim with me. So they're looking to find a way to fund me. And the whole notion of the right selection of the right funder and the right mechanism for the program or the process that you want to promulgate in the community is really the first part of being a good what is called grantsmanship, which I'm sure is a term you're familiar with. But the idea is to have a very clear, very well-defined need that you have articulated that also fills a gap that we know as a community needs to be filled. And so that's the first part, is the idea. Twinned with that is your descriptor of yourselves as being the absolute right people to carry out this program in order to bridge that gap. So each is equally important as the other, and each has its own series of elements that are in any grant mechanism, the pieces of data that you want to pull from your own archive that prove up both the idea and your bona fides as the best group to carry this out. So where do you start with really knowing that you've either and both chosen the right funder and the right funding mechanism? A shared or common foundational mission or goal is really job one. So starting with you reading the potential funder, the funder's statement of their mission and how you can map that to your mission or goal or vision is the absolute starting place with writing a grant. The other thing, and although this goes without saying, I say it all the time because people find it, a good reminder, which is whenever you actually start looking at a grant mechanism, reading through the entire grant, looking at all of the elements that they are asking you to provide to them, which will be reviewed by a review committee, is job one, right after making sure that your foundation mission maps to the funder. And they want to see that you have experience doing what this particular mechanism asks for, whether it is a delivery system, whether it's studying something related to a policy, community-based health equity, whatever it is that is your particular area of expertise and their need. Again, it's a matching and mapping thing. Another really important thing to look at and think about is how the agreements that will really be the fundamental building blocks of your governance of the relationship that you're going to develop with this funder are acceptable to you. Because if there are aspects of the way that they say they are going to require any of their grant recipients to report or to communicate, that is not a good match for you, memos of understanding, all of those kinds of things, defining how you're going to share and coordinate data. If any of those things are not a good match, best to look elsewhere or consider whether those are adjustments that you can make. So these are all things that you want to do before you even start thinking, yes, this is the right funder and the right mechanism for me. Another very good early stage grantsmanship thing is to look at the mix of funding sources that you have: grants, donations, direct contracting, because one of the things that may make you a very attractive applicant is the prove up that you are a sustainable organization that is going to be able to follow through and complete the grant application, or complete the grant goal that you are applying for. So again, looking at all of the proof that you have of your funding mix and your fiscal responsibility is another pre-writing event. And then finally, the prove up of all of this, and I keep saying prove up because that is really the heart of a grant. It is proving your bona fides and the bona fides of your idea. And we do that with data, whether we call those data, community surveys for which you have gotten, reviews of your work, your funding history, your capacity to share client or patient level data, how you track the outcomes of your track record. So they are looking at you to see what your track record was. Have you tracked your outcomes with other obligations you've taken on, so that they can see, yes, this is an organization to whom the grant of funds is going to be well spent. So let me stop there for a second and see if there are any questions about any of these kind of pre-writing tasks that define how you sit as an applicant and how well you match to what this funding organization is looking for in their applicants. Tyra, anything have come up yet? All right, I'll assume no from silence and keep
Yeah.
moving. Good.
Oh, wait, one just
Oh,
popped up right
all
on
right.
time. The question is, what are some strategies for writing grants for organizations that are smaller, just launching, or looking for their first big grant? What are some
Okay.
arguments oh, sorry.
Go ahead, keep going.
What are some arguments you've used to justify the proof that the organization can step up? How do you write for the first funding grants? I'm assuming first funding meaning that it's their first time.
Sure.
Yep.
The bottom line here is that everybody has to write a first grant. And sometimes you're successful and sometimes you're not with that first grant, but these principles nonetheless hold. And so even if you don't have a track record to rely on, perhaps your board, your leadership does have experience with prior organizations that they led, or you can show that you are thinking about this as a sophisticated consumer of donated or grant making funds, such that you will have a data structure set up, that you intend to have a data sharing mechanism in place, that you understand that. So what you show is that you understand that these are the functions of a well organized and well structured CBO. And you're transparent about it in saying that although this is your first foray into the grant application world, you understand and you have a plan for each of these things, which means starting well in advance of the submission date for this grant application, so that you can set these things up. You can find memo of understanding templates. You can draw on other community-based organizations or grants clearinghouses that will often have templates like these for you, so that you can talk the talk while you're learning to walk the walk. I hope that helps somewhat. So other things to think about and other things that help to support and make the case that you are the right organization is showing that you are inclined toward shared leadership, whether it's an academic or a public health organization, and that your partners or sponsors' notion is that you are there to involve and empower the community-based organization and the community, most importantly. Secondly, that members play a direct decision-making role, that is not necessarily an advisory role, that it is a role of decision-making from the start, and that the financial and organizational capacity to grow with the increasing funds that are coming in, if you are successful with this application, will be sophisticated, audit proof, have an audit function already inserted so that, again, we all know of too many. I mean, it makes page one of the Cron all too frequently about community-based or municipal fiscal organizations that have not withstood audits because they do not have the proper kind of mechanisms in place. So these are other factors and these are other features of your organization that speak to your reliability, your sustainability, and your attractiveness as an organization. So a word from who used to be our sponsors. You know, it is a sad fact that a lot of the organizations at the national level that would have sponsored potentially many of the things that you look at in part that you seek to fund in partnership with an academic or other organization are scheduled for obliteration. Now with the government shut down and with no budget in sight, we don't know whether these parts of the NIH are actually going to be completely pulled out or not, but just so that you know, we are in a moment where organizations are looking at their own funding against the president's priorities. It doesn't even say the administration's priorities. And I stuck this slide in here so that you understand how redoubled we are in the academic world to partner with the community in the face of this kind of stuff coming at us all the time. So back to the art of grantsmanship, to start with, it is not a 1 week, 2 week, or sometimes even 1 month event to write a grant. If you can, part of your organization, somebody should be charged with scanning all of the funding opportunities that are potentially available to you so that you give yourself truly a 3 to 6 month runway in which to start thinking about ideas that will meet the requirements of a particular notice of funding opportunity, notice of award, request for proposal, if it's the city or the Department of Public Health or some other organization. Again, the art of grantsmanship is striking that balance between doing too much, which a sophisticated grantor knows is not possible in the time frame that this grant lives for and the amount of money they're going to give you, and a very relevant but completable topic or program or process. Again, coming back to alignment with the mission or vision statement. And more importantly than anything else is that this 3 to 6 month runway gives you an opportunity to become absolutely expert on the instructions for applicants that will be on their website, you know, and should be really the first place you look at. Within this 3 month or 6 month timeline, you are going to start looking at that grant application. And my favorite way to do this, and you may have your own method, but I am a big fan of using color coding and highlighting in a PDF along with using the comments function so that you have your own personal annotation of the grant instructions at which for each point and each, you know, 1A, 2B, 3C, etc., you have a comment that fills in this second bottom bullet here, which are the preliminary data that you will need to pull from all of the different hidey holes in in your organization that prove up. And for our brand new applicants, I understand this is something you're going to have to figure out on your own for the prove up, but for existing foundations, or excuse me, existing organizations that have some track record, figure out what the most relevant data points are and who in the organization has that institutional knowledge that they can bring to write this section of the grant. Because the other very important thing, you as the leaders of your organization need to put together a small elite strike force for writing a grant. And part of this annotation process or color coding process, pink is the relevance, green is the fiscal stuff, blue is the personnel, whatever sort of schema you want to use. You will highlight who is going to be responsible for gathering those data for you, gathering that track record information, and who are the key personnel that you are going to deploy as the team that will ultimately carry this out. Any questions there so far? Okay, so here we go back to the Department of Redundancy department. Read every word of the application. Again, this is not a good project for 11 o'clock at night when you're already exhausted and your eyeballs are bleeding and you've already been overcome by what who is doing to what all across the world. This again goes back to looking at the data that you need for all of the different sections, the idea of the process, your community served, the track record, the financial, and the personnel structure. Then, after you've got that fully annotated set of instructions, you set up a template. At least this is how I do this, no matter what style of grant we're writing. You take those instructions and you can just, if they don't give you a template already with sometimes you'll have a PDF or you'll have a link that you can go to where you will download a fillable form. If they don't do that, you take the actual instructions and you cut and paste into a new document. Each of the bullets that they put in question 1 or section 1, where they have 4 bullets of the information that they want, you stick those in so that you can then fill in right underneath them. That is the only way that I know in the decades that I've been doing this to ensure that I will not miss a key element that they are going to be reviewing you on to ensure that you filled it in. Now, the other thing about the template after the major headings and the sections, and if they give you a line or a character count of how many words you get in each of these sections, in addition to the formatting requirements, if they say it can only be 6 pages, you will get, bipped out of the system if you submit something that is 6 pages and 1 word. So you want to make sure you've got all that. The review criteria, which usually end up way at the end of the instructions, will show you for each section by section, what the questions are that they're going to have their reviewers answering as they read through your application. So my instruction always for my colleagues and my faculty are to take those review criteria, cut and paste them and put them in a comment right next to the start of each of those numbered or lettered outlined sections in your template so that you can constantly go back to them and answer the questions that they have cited as their review criteria exactly as they cite them, because they are checking these things off. The easier you make it for them to see that you have answered a question that they can check off, the happier they will be with the review process with you, right? Then again, within this 3 to 6 month period before the deadline, I identify who the program officer is or who the key personnel are at the funding organization. See if you can get a 15-minute, a 5-minute informational conversation with them, or if they prefer to do things via email, fine, if that's all you can get, with some very targeted, structured, and I would say 3 questions tops that are absolutely critical to your own analysis of whether this is a good match whether the mechanism is a good match and whether the funder is a good match for you. And what you need to present with this sort of 3-question thing is the nicest, sweetest, most, most parsimonious articulation of your research idea or your funding idea and how it matches, or making sure how it matches their criteria. That's really what you want to get from the program officer. I saw that a couple of questions may have come in. Tyra, are those things we want to address now?
I don't see the questions that
Okay,
you
good. I saw something pop up in the bottom of my
Oh, that might have been me. I was asking
Ah,
folks if they had any
okay,
questions, so
sure.
please put them in the chat.
No problem. All right, onward. So now, we kind of get to the substance, which is, here again, you are going to be, by this time, an absolute expert in what those instructions are. And when I say you want to clearly frame, the thing that you uniquely bring is the knowledge of your community. What is important to the people with lived experience who are going to be the beneficiaries, and in some cases, the providers, the developers of the idea that you are proposing to have funded. So how that community voices and shapes the project goals and how they are going to be implemented is the most critical thing for you to articulate. So when you think about how much time you have to actually fill out this application, don't stint yourself on how many drafts of that shaping project you are going to have to go through to ensure that you have the most beautiful and persuasive articulation of what you're going to do. Again, highlighting past success in engaging and serving or representing the intended population. And also, very importantly, how the findings are going to be shared with and put to use by the community. And here is something, again, where if this is not something that your organization has done, you have been always on the front end of developing the project, carrying it out, but the follow-on, the knock-on effects, the utility of the knowledge that you will have gained by putting forth this program, how is that going to be used as a building block? That is something, in our fields, in health policy and in medicine, we call it, the implementation step. But if that is not something that you're familiar with, here is something where our community engagement division of the CTSI can give you an excellent, I mean, that is an excellent consultation. We have a whole implementation, we call it the last mile arm that Rana and Tyra and Roberto can put you in touch with, who describe for you what the basics of implementation of a community-based program is, that can help you write a very sophisticated implementation section. So utilize all of the resources that are available to you, including those at UCSF, to write the most sophisticated application that you can. So whoop, somehow, there we go. So the implementation is part of the dissemination of the results. What are the formats going to look like? Do you have a website which will then have results of our so-and-so program? Who can you connect with as a knowledge broker? Are you a member of a larger umbrella organization, which would be a fielding house, a fielding mechanism for disseminating your results across the county, across the state, across a national organization? How can you connect to leverage what you have done? And don't forget, these organizations, these funding organizations, want their names out there as the funder of successful programs. So they are looking for ways to leverage that branding, and you are a brand, don't forget. And so all the different ways that you can, sort of multiply the multipliers of how the results are going to go out into the community and beyond are a very attractive piece of your application. And then finally, again, going back to demonstrating very strong fiscal and administrative systems is going to be something that they will prize in reviewing your application. The ways in the actual program and programmatic features themselves that you want to think of. And again, these bulleted lists that I'm giving you are the thought questions that, in addition to the actual instructions that the application has in it on the funder's website, these are other things that I want you to know, I think are important thought questions for you to ask yourselves in your grant writing meetings to ensure that you are meeting the needs of your community and, sort of the larger community. So again, we don't have to go through each of these all the time, but look for webinars, look for info sessions that they are providing, look for office hours that the funder is going to find to clarify any of these guidelines. And then finally, if you can engage internal reviewers, your community members with lived experience, other professionals with direct knowledge of the population, whether they are other program officers who are, your team of rivals, but in this case are not going to be competing against you for a particular grant, because you should be responsible for then, reviewing one of their applications for a mechanism that you're not going to be applying for, and develop those relationships so that you can, strengthen any aspect that they see in the application that either seems less well addressed, needs further clarification, like the back of your hand, but when you write it down, it's not as clear to an outsider, an interested outsider, but not a person who's an absolute expert in the same thing that you're an expert in. So those are further to the grantsmanship kinds of things that you want to look at. So in a scientific grant that we typically would write to a national funder like the NIH, there is always a section called the significance section. And I provide this slide to you here with these kind of critical criteria for what defines the significance. Because again, no matter what kind of grant you're applying for, you must make the case that this is going to be significant to advance some knowledge that is not currently known, or some absolutely critical process, or some piece of the healthcare continuum that is absent in our community, and how you're going to advance that in the field or more broadly, what you consider to be an important gap in delivery or knowledge, solving a critical problem that we know is unique to our community, creating a new methodology or conceptual or technical advance to delivering community health. So again, these are ways to train yourself in the thinking that a grant funder is thinking. So, again, we don't have to go through each of these things in detail now, because you're going to have these slides by this afternoon, I would think. But these are the kinds of questions we ask ourselves because we know that this is what funders are interested in. In addition to the significance, they're often looking for innovation. We know what the right thing to do is. Why haven't we been able to achieve it? Well, maybe you have a really great innovative way of reaching your population. And I like to phrase this as the but for question. But for our new delivery system, but for our unbelievably determined follow-up planning, but for our whatever the superior design features are that you are going to use for your new delivery system, we would not be able to reach this population that we know in the past has been very difficult to reach. We have not had the kind of follow-up. We have not had the wraparound. We have not had all of these things that you are going to innovate on and prove and call it out as an innovation for your project. So these are the kinds of words that you use that are the defining features of innovation that are often very impressive and are part of the review criteria for a grant mechanism. Finally, what is the feasibility of the approach and the rigor of the approach? If you're going to roll something out at 3 different sites across San Francisco, you need to show that the way you've designed the rollout is going to be, if relevant, the exact same in each of the places, so that you know that what you're doing, that your training of your frontline staff are going to be absolutely terrific across the board, so that if you have less good outcomes at one site, it's not because they were not rolling the program out the same way they were doing at the other 2 sites. And that has to do with how well you describe the training, the feasibility, the follow-up of training to ensure that you are checking for the important outcomes over time and in the run-up period, all of those kinds of things for a rollout, which I know you know about. But are you in the grant application showing that you know that you believe in rigor and feasibility of approach, such that you're checking in at the right periodicity, whether it is 2 weeks after you launch and then 3 months later, and checking back, and all of these kinds of things that will ensure that you're meeting your goals, that you're collecting your data, and that you are going to complete this program according to the milestones that you've met. And that speaks to the feasibility of the program. And again, you will often see that the review criteria includes something like feasibility or meeting milestones, something like that. And often your funding may be delivered in tranches. In other words, you don't get the entire funding for year 1 on day 1. You get the first piece of funding, and then you have to show a milestone at 6 months. Have you enrolled so many people? Do you have this many kids in a program? Have you delivered this many vaccinations? Have you fed this many people? Whatever it is, you want to make sure that you have a process in place for actually collecting those milestones and showing that you've met them. So that's kind of the next piece of that. And then finally, they are going to be, that speaks to the first bullet from, slide 2 there, which is the robustness of the program and the ideas. The twinned piece of this is the expertise and the resources that your organization brings. The project leads, demonstrated background, the right kind of training and expertise, the right kind of leadership to lead and carry out this work. And then secondly, the environment. Are the resources that you are going to bring underscored or undergirded by the funding that your foundation or the funding mechanism is going to ensure that you're going to be able to execute on the proposed work? And so describing that, again, making sure that you have the data about your project leads, good bio sketches, good bio blurbs for those. Don't wait till the last minute to do those. Those are an excellent thing for instance, if you have an intern working for you, or if you have a new staff member who you need to get to know your other staff, that's a great thing to deploy somebody to, because it requires them to look through your existing data, your existing CVs, and put those bio sketches or blurbs in the format that this application calls for. Don't wait till the last minute. Similarly, your environment. All of you on your websites probably have a blurb about what your mission and vision are. Just before applying for a grant in this hopefully 3 to 6 month run-up period is a great time to review that. Review it with your board. Make sure that if it's gotten old and you need to sort of bump it up again to the current moment, if there's a way that you can make your foundation's mission statement speak to this minute. That's an excellent thing to do. They are going to be looking at your website. Make sure the website is really up to date, that you don't have, sort of old materials on there. Zhuzh it up a little bit. This is making yourself the most beautiful person you can, the most beautiful organization you can in this, funding survivor panel that we're going through. Finally, when we refer, often you'll see in an application that the goals or the aims in a scientific or health policy kind of application, often they'll call them the specific aims, but this is sort of the intro section to the whole grant. And again, these are thought questions to remind yourself about. You want to excite your reviewer, your potential funder, but you want to preserve their sense of security. And again, this goes with this twinned idea that you have this wonderful, innovative idea, but it is feasible. These are naturally sort of conservative or fiscally conservative thinking people. They want to give you the money. They are charged with giving you the money, but they want to be sure that that money is not going to be squandered or wasted or not put to the best possible use. And so there is a, kind of balance to hit between exciting them about what you're going to do, but making sure it doesn't sound so pie in the sky that they know that it just doesn't seem feasible. So being careful to write about that is really important. So how do you excite your reviewers or your funder? Be topical, position yourself as being the people at the leading edge in this field. If there is a controversy in the field, housing first, supportive housing, all, many of these things, there is a controversy raging in the community among your, your own community about this. Take it on carefully. Be well evidenced if you're describing a disagreement or a disruption in the existing methods that you think you have a good way to fix. And then again, de-risking, articulating and covering potential pitfalls that you find the pitfalls before they can say, hey, what about that potential problem? You identify it, but then match it against your, your strength in your application. We know that it may be a concern that we have accounted for that with. So known barriers in the field, call them out, but describe how your organization knows how to overcome those barriers. Anticipate, anticipate, anticipate. So again, that, so intro specific aims or however they're going to style it in the application really should be a roadmap or kind of a table of contents of what the reader is going to find if they stick with you to the end of the application. There's going to be really good methods, well-focused objectives with milestones mapped to each of those and what your expected outcomes are going to be. The strategy for how you're going to do this, again, this is your, your set of frameworks or bulleted lists that as you're writing, you think, what do we know? Who do we know? What don't we know? How do we answer the so what question? Why should they fund us for this? Succinct and objective. Here's your, bulleted checklist for the approach, your pioneering of or familiarity with the population, how you reach them, relevant track record. If it's an early stage project, your strategy to establish feasibility, and how you're going to manage high risk aspects of the work that are there, but how to overcome. So again, I'm going to, sort of run through these quickly. This is a screenshot, as you can see, from a scientific grant. But what I wanted to show you about this is how they kind of map out where and how the milestones will be reached. And you should have a similar sort of Gantt chart or something like that that shows each of the milestones for your strategy, when you're going to reach them, and how your outcomes are going to be described. So I have here a set of funders that are, large national organizations, local disease or national disease specific foundations, and thinking now, especially in this era, in the funding moment that we are finding ourselves in, research partners or development partners who could be corporate, pharmaceutical companies, other kinds of companies that are interested in reaching your population that you may not have thought of before as potential foundation or funding sources. State and local, sign up for notice of funding opportunities. There are listservs galore all over the place. State Health Department has a zillion research initiatives. Regional biotech investment funds understand that local and national public health systems are stressed to the max or the breaking point. They are stepping up, but you have to be a really sophisticated consumer of what's out there and go find them. I have a quick exemplar here from the San Francisco Human Rights Commission. This is a current request for proposal. We don't have to go through, slide by slide, because you can look at this on your own time. But this is an example of them describing exactly what their goal is for a particular community-driven initiative that advances equity and cultural inclusion, the kinds of focus areas on health and well-being, workforce and education, et cetera. So if you looked at this proposal, you could map your CBO's particular strength to each of the things they're looking for. Then this is their instructions, where they have a particular link that you click through to make sure that you are the right kind of organization to map to their funding mechanism. Then here is exactly how I would, this is exactly what their narrative template looks like. But if you cut and paste this into your own document, this is how you put these bullets in there, and you fill in underneath each of these exactly what they are looking for. These are their review criteria, and they show you how they're going to rate each of them. 35 points for this, 15 points for that, so forth, right? And they even call out a program design and implementation. So go through this color code maybe in, bright pink, those things where you want to get a consultation, whether it's from community engagement or one of our other possible consultation service resources for you. Philanthropy is similar in that they always have a very clear mission or vision. Go through and look and find a foundation. There are many clearinghouses for philanthropic and other funding. And I've given you here a whole bunch of these that you can look at and go through with, again, a couple of examples of what a foundation funding application looks like. They're slightly different from these others, but the rules, the first principles of reading the dang thing from start to finish and knowing exactly what they're looking for to match so that you don't waste your own time or their time is the first principle for everything. They are very interested in being, for instance, catalytic funding rather than a permanent endowment. Their values match to your values. These are the kinds of things that you'll see in a foundation philanthropic kind of thing. Pitfalls are too little detail or overreaching by proposing more work than can be accomplished, matched with unrealistic funding. So here are a whole bunch of things as you're proofing and finishing, identifying outside readers so that you can make sure that you're clear and consistent. Proofreading from hard copy. This is with my editor hat on. You can't proofread on the screen, I promise you. You have to print it out and read it on paper. With apologies for the waste of the paper, it's not a waste. Having it look beautiful actually helps. And again, the rest of these are all loads of philanthropic and other resources that you can look for. I haven't left us quite in the amount of time that Tyra and Rana wanted me to, but let's just flip to opening the floor so that if there are questions or things that I can clarify further.
Awesome. So we actually have two. One was referring to earlier when you were talking about reaching out to folks at different philanthropic or just grant organizations. The question was, do you recommend contacting the program officer in each case? And I'm assuming in each case, meaning for each grant. And are there some situations where it could harm your application by reaching out to folks?
First of all, I would say, yes, there is no funding mechanism in which reaching out to the program officer would be considered a faux pas. And I have never had an experience where reaching out to the program officer has been deleterious or it had a negative effect on the application. All you're doing intel gathering. The more intel you have, the better chance you have of submitting an application that they are going to be interested in. So I mean, that sounds like it might be coming from a particular experience. So if the requester wants to clarify that further, or if I'm not understanding what it is, I'm happy to talk about a specific case. But in my experience, it has always been helpful to reach out to the PO directly and efficiently.
Thank you so much. And for the person who did ask that question, because it was anonymous, if you would like to send another anonymous follow-up to that, I'm more than happy to read that out loud as well. The next question was, you had mentioned listservs earlier. The question was just, can you recommend some listservs if you have any offhand?
I have given you a million in in the slide deck,
Yes.
which that's where I cut off the share because you don't need to look at lists and lists of websites. But you will see when Tyra sends you the slide deck, there's like 3 slides worth of clearinghouse and links to organizations, and you can get on their listserv. So yes.
Great. Thank you so much. So right now we don't have any additional questions, but I will leave space and time for folks who may be typing questions and sending them in. But yeah, if for our audience, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A or raise your hand as well, and we can also read it out for you as well. Yes.
And I don't want to put Rana too much on the spot, but Rana, as a well-schooled grant writer and grant writer with me, if there's anything else that you can think about our experience that you want to share, because you have had much experience in this field, please, let's use your expertise.
Thanks, Amy. I really appreciate this presentation. So thorough and helpful. And I hope folks got a lot of information and a lot of useful information. I think one thing and I think you said this and just want to underscore is don't shy away from, in writing the proposal itself, don't shy away from being repetitive. Like you want the readers of your application to get your point, your main thesis, your main kind of focus. You want them to understand it. And so if that means using the same phrasing over and over again, or the same couple of sentences over and over again to kind of reiterate and continue to expand that, like use it in the abstract, use it in the goals, use it in the approach. I think that like don't be, I think sometimes folks feel the need to kind of say things in different ways. And while I think that's great for like general writing, I think for grant writing that can be actually detrimental to getting the point across. And try to put on a reviewer hat, like, you know, if someone is reading this from an external perspective, am I explaining this in as simple, as clear, and as straightforward a way as possible? Because that's, you know, I've been a reviewer, I've been a writer. when you're wearing the reviewer hat, you read through it a couple of times, and that's all you give it. And and getting your points across really clearly in those couple of times is essential. We have
Absolutely.
one other question, Amy.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the use of AI to help with frameworks,
Oh boy.
milestones, any suggestions, or any, cautions?
I'll go
We should probably do a whole webinar on this, actually.
we probably should.
Yeah.
I will give you the cautions first. Hallucinations are real. I'm sure you all know the term in the AI world where particularly things like references or citing a particular fact, you want to make absolutely sure that that is not something that the AI chatbot has made up. Double check. Do not rely on what you read as being the evidence-based truth. You are charged with making that clear for yourself. Now, if you want to see what a potential chatbot will, and I make no representation or warranty about the value of a particular one, whether it's ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or any of these things. Sure. Put in a prompt where you know what the right features should be and compare and see what several different chatbots come up with for you for write an introduction to the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation about the delivery of a clean needle sharing site in the city and county of San Francisco. See what you and ask for references. Always ask for references. That's one of the features you can put into a prompt to an AI bot. See what you get and you are the expert in your field. See how that maps against what you would think you would want to put. Now, if it helps you to start framing, okay, I would not have a chatbot write everything related to you, your mission statement, your bona fides. I think, and don't forget, every time you put something out there in the AI world, it becomes fodder for feeding the beast and the machine. So your unique or innovative idea suddenly is available to the world in a lot of cases, especially if you're not careful. I mean, I use the Jurassic Park idea. The electric fence will never keep the dinosaurs inside, right? There ain't none. So um, just know there is no electric fence behind your best innovative idea. And look, I am a collaborative person, but when I'm writing a grant, I am really competitive. You are competing against all the other potential organizations that are competing for a limited pie. So, think carefully about what you actually put into your prompt. But that said, it can be very helpful. There is no question. But I would not rely on a chatbot to write a grant quickly. Give yourself that 3 to 6 month runway. Tyra, I sent you the final set of slides before we started, but I'm going to ask you to hold off for a minute because to Rana's point about making sure that you articulate with exactly the same verbiage or turn of phrase across the different sections of the grant is an absolute first principle. And I put it in my scientific grant slides, but I didn't in this one, and absolutely I will. So wait to publish, Tyra, until I make that adjustment.
Sounds good. We will, Amy.
Anything else? Any other questions from folks?
There are people, it's more so comments and praise. So
Oh.
folks are saying this is a great presentation, excellent presentation, great input. And one person had commented saying that they are snapping behind their screen in agreement.
Well,
so yes.
if I can also ask, and thank you guys very much. If there are things as you're working along that you feel that we have left out of this presentation, would you please be in touch with Tyra and Rana so that the next time we do this, and I really do hope there will be a next time, or we'll do a grant writing 2.0 now that we've had sort of 1.0, that we will continue to make this an evergreen kind of presentation that only helps you as you become more and more skilled in the field.
Yeah.
Thank you,
And
Amy.
yeah.
Pleasure.
Yes.
All right, so are we signing off?
Yes, we are at 2:04, but it was worth it because you gave so much great information. And so again, thank you folks for joining. And there is a short questionnaire after where you can definitely give us some input on what topics were missing, what questions you still had that are lingering. And again, like huge thank you for Amy for coming and speaking at this webinar and giving so much input and yeah, and just pouring back to the community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank
Pleasure.
you so much, Amy.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.